This is the Church of St. Paul in the Desert.
Please be seated. I'd like to invite the kids to come up, please. And what I'd like you kids to do is I'd like you to sit down right in this area down here. So go all the way over so people don't have to walk over you. I think we got at least one more over there. Even visiting kids are welcome. Especially if it fills out the kid zone. All right. Come on in and come on over on this side and sit by some of the other girls over here. All right. Now, for all of you parents out there, no, we're not going to sing the Zacchaeus song. Okay, so sorry. But I've got a question for you all. Do you ever see people that other people don't like? You see people, you don't have to tell me who they are yet, especially if it's your, okay, so do you ever kind of see people who belong and people who look like they don't belong? Yeah? Mario, you are great. You're checking all of this. Let's go like, sometimes in your family, you know that's a place where you belong, right? And you know there are other families. So if somebody from another family came in, you might immediately say, hey, wait a minute. Well, there were 3 of us before, and who's this 4th person, right? So some people don't belong. So what I've got here is it's a rope. Yep, it's a rope. We have a church word for it, but it's a rope. And what I'm doing is I'm kind of setting this as a group that you all are inside. You all belong. Maybe this is a family, and hopefully I won't trip on it. Maybe this is a family, but you all belong. Okay? So it feels pretty good to be inside, doesn't it? It's a little bit safer because you're inside, and so the people here are the people who will take care of you, look after you, right? They'll feed you sometimes, right? Do they feed you? Yes, they're good. Everybody's saying yes, they feed you. That's good. Okay, now, sometimes we'll find somebody who isn't necessarily part of this group. Okay? How does he look? Does he look happy? Do you think he's happy? No? Any of you think he's happy? How would you describe the way he looks right now? Mario, you've had a hand up a lot. I'd like to let somebody... Okay, Ramon. He looks sad. Would you agree with that? He kind of looks sad. Do you think he's sad because he's not a part of us in here? What might we do to help him not be so sad? What would one of you maybe think of doing with that rope? Okay, yeah. Would somebody like to invite him in by moving the rope out and showing him? Okay. How about if you and Ramon move the rope on the other side of him? See how that does it. Pick it up and walk it around him, and we'll make it a little bit bigger space. Now come on back in, and maybe you could even just stay put. No, you're not going to tie him up. just put it on the ground there. That's a good place to put it, right there. And now you can go back and sit down, and maybe he'll even come over and sit with us. You can sit right there. Now I got to say, how does he look now? How does he look there? He looks happy, doesn't he? And does he look happy? He looks happy because you brought him in, right? He's in a place where you just told him he belongs to. This place is a safe place for him. It's a place, his name is John, by the way. It's a place where John is welcome too. So That's one of the things from the gospel. Zacchaeus was somebody who was outside. And he went and he climbed a tree, and Jesus said, you don't need to be up in that tree. Come down here. And Jesus brought him into the circle. And then he said, today salvation has come to this house. Jesus said, today Zacchaeus is happy because he belongs. So that's your lesson. When you run into people who don't belong at your school, at daycare, any place where you are, you can kind of take the rope and say, hey, come and be a part of our group. And you can be part of making people belong, making people happy, and being a part of Jesus saving the world. Okay? Thank you. You can go back to your place. All right? Thank you. I'll let you take that, please. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be always acceptable in your sight, O God, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. I'm going to try to be very brief, but I'm going to start out talking about Habakkuk, the reading that we had from Habakkuk. Do you remember that? Where Habakkuk was talking about violence. This is not a part of the sermon, but it's great. He's trying to keep out of the camera zone. Okay, that's why John is such a part of this and why John belongs so much. Okay. Habakkuk is talking about his world in which everything is not all right, where there's violence. There's a line that says, the wicked surround the righteous, and therefore justice is perverted. Now, I may be alone in this, but I don't think what Habakkuk was complaining about or was concerned about was something that just happened back then. I think in almost any era, we could find a time when all we see around us is violence and destruction. When we see that the righteous are surrounded by the wicked, and we can see that justice isn't done, justice seems to be perverted. Does anybody else see that? Okay, yeah. So what I want to talk about are three things in response to that: relationship, truth, and wellness. These are blessings that are to be shared, and they are a way of responding to the challenges that Habakkuk was talking about. I've got, there's a word in the psalm, the next to the last verse of the psalm. That's why I left my book up here, because I wanted to remember it exactly. Your justice is an everlasting justice, and your law is the truth. Now, for me, in this particular psalm, your law is the truth should all be in caps, because it is truth writ very large. It is the largest vision of truth you can imagine. Okay? Now, the reality is each of us has a little bit of that truth. Each of us can grab a little bit of that, right? And the truth that we have, it might be incredibly important to us. It might organize the way we live our lives and everything else. But I just at best give it a capital T, and then the rest of it is lowercase. And that's to describe that my truth is always a great deal less than what God might imagine, right? Well, truth is also kind of a problem, because I've got my truth, and I know the truth. And so my life is organized by this truth, and I'm really trying to hold on to it. And I'm trying to protect this truth from all the people that are trying to change it, that are trying to say it's not important. And so I'm really attached to this, and I even get a little bit defensive about it sometimes. But you know what? I saw Kirk over here. Kirk thinks he has some truth too. And I saw him, and he was very partial to it, and he was holding it like this, and he was protecting it. And how can he have that if I have it? How can he have the truth if I have the truth? Have you ever run into circumstances like that? Where you've got maybe 2, 3 people who all have kind of like feel like they have the truth, but it's a little bit different from yours. Well, I think that we might find that those kind of things are why wars get fought and why lots of things break down. Maybe that's kind of what Habakkuk was talking about when he looked at, when he complained about the violence and the destruction that was around. But one of the ways that we can change that is by relationship, by the blessing of relationship. If I were to go over, Kirk, I'm going to ask you to come up here, please. And I didn't prep him for this, but he has such a gorgeous tie that I wanted to use Kirk. Kirk, I know that you've got the truth, and it's very important to you, and I wanted to know if you would tell me a little bit about your truth. Would you do that?
Okay.
Okay, and at this point, Kirk has said he would, and do you know what I do at this point? I shut up, and I listen to Kirk. We spend a lot of time talking about communication, and we've got folks that are communicating like gangbusters. And they're just sharing stuff here, and they're sharing stuff there. And from their perspective, communication is all about what they're pushing out. But the kind of relationship that will be built by listening, and by listening to Kirk share his truth. And at the end of the day, at the end of that conversation, I might have, 2 things might happen. I might understand better what Kirk means when he's talking about truth, and Kirk might say to me, Andrew, could you tell me about yours too? And then he'd listen. Thanks, Kirk. Then he'd listen. And at the end of that, do you know what we would have? Each of us would have this piece of truth that we love, that we're protecting, that we'd give our lives for and everything else. But having listened to each other, for each of us, that piece of truth has gotten a little bit bigger. With the kids this morning, they were safe in a group, and they saw there was somebody else in need outside of the group. And so with coaching, they expanded the group to include more. When we build relationships, we get the opportunity to listen and to learn more about the truth that other people are very attached to, even if it's different from our truth. And our truth expands. And maybe instead of just a capital T and a little R, maybe the R is now capital too. And we're enlarging this sense of truth so that it aims at the truth that God is responsible for all of us. When we look at Zacchaeus was somebody that everybody already knew everything they needed to know about. He was a collaborator. He was a bad guy. But he wanted to see Jesus. He wanted to learn from Jesus. So Jesus saw him in the tree and said, "Come down. I'm going to go to your house today and we're going to have a talk. I'm going to listen. I'm going to be your guest. You're going to share with me your truth." And the grumblers grumble. Why is he listening to that truth? Why is Jesus paying any attention to him? We know what kind of person he is. Have you ever heard that? We know everything we even need to know about him or her before we've even listened, because we've already made those judgments. And so that fella begins to share with Jesus something different, something nobody expected. I'm going to give away half of everything I own. If there's anybody I've squeezed a little too hard when I was collecting taxes, I'm going to pay them back 4 times as much. And what does Jesus say in response to all of that? Jesus says that today salvation has come to this house. Health, wellness has come to this house. The blessing of wellness has become real for Zacchaeus because he was able to share his truth and it was heard, and he built a relationship with Jesus. Relationship, truth, and wellness are all a part of what God has called us to do. So where's a rope that you might need to move in your life? Where's somebody that you know everything you already need to know about them but have never listened to? That's the invitation, to build your truth toward God's truth, to bless others with relationship, that the world might be made whole.